The cursor blinked mockingly at me from the computer screen at 11:47 p.m., another line of code refusing to cooperate with my increasingly frayed patience. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, bitter liquid for a bitter night. That's when my phone buzzed with Nicole's text. Stuck in traffic? Don't wait up. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at those words, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Traffic at midnight on a Tuesday in suburban Cleveland? Right. I opened the Find My iPhone app we'd installed for safety reasons, and watched the little blue dot that represented my wife of 12 years. She wasn't on Interstate 90, or any highway for that matter. She was at the Blue River Inn. The Blue River Inn, that dive motel on the east side where truckers and cheating spouses went to conduct their sordid business. The place had hourly rates and probably hadn't changed its sheets since the Clinton administration. My fingers trembled as I typed back, "Great, I'll send your location to his wife. Maybe she can help you get through traffic." The 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, "No, Aaron, please don't." And there it was. Confirmation wrapped in panic and delivered with a side of desperation. My wife of 12 years, mother of our 10-year-old son Owen, was screwing someone at the sleaziest motel in Cuyahoga County. I took a screenshot of her location, then another of our text exchange. My hands moved with surgical precision despite the rage building in my chest like steam in a pressure cooker. I'd always been methodical. It's what made me good at debugging code and apparently debugging my marriage. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my Honda Civic in the Blue River Inn parking lot, staring at Nicole's white Lexus parked next to a lifted Ford F-150 with Beast Mode decals across the back window. Classy. I recognized the truck immediately. It belonged to Brad Kowalski, one of the trainers at Nicole's fitness club. Brad, 28 years old, biceps bigger than his brain, and the kind of guy who wore tank tops to parent-teacher conferences. Nicole managed the Fitness First Club where Brad worked, which made this whole situation even more delicious from a professional misconduct standpoint. I sat there for a moment, letting the full weight of betrayal settle over me like a heavy blanket. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of supporting Nicole's career ambitions, of taking Owen to soccer practice when she had to work late, or so she claimed, of believing her when she said she was building something important at the club. Well, she was building something, all right, just not what I'd thought. The rational part of my brain, the part that had earned me a computer science degree and helped me build a moderately successful software consulting business, told me to drive home, hire a lawyer, and handle this like a civilized adult. But the other part of my brain, the part that had been systematically lied to and manipulated for God knows how long, I compromised. I got out of my car and walked over to Brad's truck. The parking lot was dimly lit, with only one functioning streetlight casting long shadows between the vehicles. Perfect. I pulled out my keys and carved Home Wrecker into the driver's side door, the metal making a satisfying screech against the paint. Then I knelt down and used my pocket knife to let the air out of both front tires, not slashing them, just removing the valve caps and pressing the little pins until they hissed their deflation. For my final touch, I grabbed one of Owen's dirty soccer socks from my gym bag, I'd been meaning to wash his gear, and tucked it under the windshield wiper, a little calling card. As I walked back to my car, I noticed a teenage girl in the apartment complex across the street filming from her window with her phone. She was giggling and whispering to someone behind her. Great. My descent into petty vandalism was about to go viral. I drove home with the windows down, letting the cool October air clear my head. The house was dark except for the porch light Nicole always insisted we leave on. For safety, she'd said. Right. Safety from everything except the danger already living inside our home. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff I saved for special occasions, and sat in my home office staring at the screenshots on my phone. The evidence was all there, digital breadcrumbs leading straight to my wife's infidelity. By morning, I'd made copies of everything and composed several very important emails. Nicole crept through the front door at 6:23 a.m., trying to be quiet. I was already up, sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop and a fresh cup of coffee, looking like I'd been there all night. Which I had. You're up early, she said, avoiding eye contact as she headed straight for the coffee maker. Couldn't sleep, I replied, not looking up from my screen. Funny thing about traffic jams. They keep you awake at night wondering how someone gets stuck for 7 hours between here and the gym. Her hand froze on the coffee pot handle. Aaron, I can explain. Can you? I finally looked at her, taking in the disheveled hair, the slightly smeared makeup, the wrinkled clothes she'd obviously put back on in a hurry. Because I'd love to hear how traffic works at the Blue River Inn. The color drained from her face. You followed me? I didn't have to. Technology is amazing these days. Your phone tells me exactly where you are, exactly when you're there, and exactly how long you stay. I turned my laptop screen toward her, showing the Find My iPhone map with her location history. 7 hours and 32 minutes. That's either the worst traffic jam in Cleveland history or the most expensive hourly rate you've ever paid. Nicole sank into the chair across from me, her face cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Denial, anger, guilt, panic. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're screwing Brad Kowalski in a motel that probably charges by the hour and provides complimentary penicillin. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. The question is, how long has this been going on? She started crying then, the kind of manipulative tears that had worked on me for years. But something had shifted overnight. Maybe it was the bourbon, maybe it was the rage, or maybe it was just the clarity that comes when someone shows you exactly who they really are. Aaron, please, it just happened. It doesn't mean anything. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop. Don't insult my intelligence more than you already have. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our perfectly manicured suburban neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson was already out walking her poodle, and Mr. Chen was retrieving his morning paper. Normal people living normal lives, probably not dealing with cheating spouses and hourly motels. Here's what's going to happen, I said, still facing the window. You're going to shower and get ready for work. You're going to go to the club and pretend everything is normal, and then you're going to wait. Wait for what? I turned around and smiled at her. Not a nice smile, but the kind of smile a shark might give a seal. For the other shoe to drop. 2 hours later, I was in my office sending the most important emails of my professional life. The first went to Brad's wife, Jessica, whom I'd met at several club social events. Nice woman, taught 3rd grade, had no idea her husband was a cheating scumbag. Dear Jessica, I wrote, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I thought you should know about your husband's extracurricular activities. I attached the screenshots, the location data, and a few choice photos I'd taken of his truck at the motel. The second email went to Robert Martinez, the regional manager for the Fitness First chain. Corporate types hated employee misconduct, especially when it involved management sleeping with subordinates. Dear Mr. Martinez, I began, I'm writing to inform you of a serious HR violation occurring at the Fitness First location on Cedar Road. I attached everything, the evidence, the timeline, even a copy of the employee handbook section about fraternization between management and staff. The third email went to my lawyer, Patricia Wong, whom I'd used for business contracts, but who also handled divorce cases. Pat, I wrote, I need to see you today. I'm about to become your newest divorce client, and I want to make sure I do this right. I hit send on all 3 emails and leaned back in my chair. Phase 1, complete. My phone rang 20 minutes later. Nicole, hysterical. Aaron, what did you do? Brad's wife is calling me, screaming. The regional manager wants to see both of us this afternoon. What did you do? I told the truth, I said calmly. Funny how the truth can be so destructive when you've been living a lie. You bastard! You can't just... I can, and I did. Actions have consequences, Nicole. You should have thought about that before you decided to redecorate the Blue River Inn. She hung up on me, but not before I heard her sobbing in the background. My office door chimed. I'd installed a sensor that announced visitors, and my business partner, Mike Henderson, walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs. You look like hell, he said, handing me one of the cups. Feel like it too. I took a sip of the coffee, much better than the swill I'd been drinking at home. Nicole's having an affair. Mike nearly choked on his coffee. Jesus, Aaron. Are you sure? Caught her at a motel last night. Well, not literally caught her, but I have enough digital evidence to convict her in any court in the country. What are you going to do? I smiled that shark smile again. I'm going to destroy her life the same way she destroyed mine, but I'm going to do it legally, methodically, and with maximum public humiliation. That sounds, Mike paused, searching for the right word. Cruel, vindictive, absolutely, but fair. I opened my laptop and showed him the evidence. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You don't know the whole story. Watch your back. I showed the text to Mike. Probably Brad, trying to intimidate me. But something about the area code nagged at me. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. That afternoon, I drove past the Fitness First Club on my way to meet with my lawyer. There was quite a commotion in the parking lot. Jessica Kowalski was there, throwing what looked like Brad's belongings out of her car and onto the sidewalk. A small crowd had gathered to watch, including several club members who were recording the drama on their phones. I parked across the street and watched the show. Jessica was screaming at Brad, who was trying to calm her down while simultaneously gathering his scattered possessions. Nicole was nowhere to be seen, probably inside getting grilled by the regional manager. My phone rang. It was Megan Walsh, Nicole's best friend and the club's HR manager. "Aaron, we need to talk." "Do we?" "This has gone far enough. You're destroying innocent people." I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Innocent? Megan, your best friend has been screwing her employee in a motel. Your employee has been cheating on his wife. Where exactly do you see innocence in this situation?" "Nicole made a mistake, but she loves you. She wants to work this out." Then she should have thought about that before she spent 7.5 hours working it out with Brad. There was a long pause. "You're not the man I thought you were, Aaron." Funny, I was thinking the same thing about Nicole. She hung up, but not before I heard her mutter something that sounded like asshole. I sat in my car, watching the drama unfold across the street, and felt something I hadn't felt in months: satisfaction. For the first time in our marriage, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix someone else's mess. I wasn't the one apologizing or compromising or pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. I was the one in control, and I was just getting started. The next morning brought fresh humiliation for Nicole, courtesy of social media and suburban gossip networks that operated more efficiently than the FBE. The teenager who'd filmed my late-night vandalism had posted the video on TikTok with the caption, "Is this your husband, Mrs. Nicole?" She'd tagged the Fitness First Club's account and used enough local hashtags to ensure maximum visibility. By the time I got to Owen's school for his parent-teacher conference, the whispers had already started. I could see it in the way other parents looked at me, some with pity, others with the barely concealed excitement that comes from witnessing someone else's domestic drama. Mrs. Rodriguez, Owen's teacher, was professional but clearly uncomfortable. "Owen seems distracted lately," she said, glancing between Nicole and me as we sat in tiny plastic chairs designed for 10-year-olds. "Is everything okay at home?" Nicole started to answer, but I cut her off. "We're going through some changes," I said. "Nothing that affects Owen's well-being." That was a lie, of course. Everything affects a kid's well-being when his parents' marriage is imploding in real time on social media. But I wasn't about to discuss my wife's infidelity with an elementary school teacher. After the conference, Nicole cornered me in the parking lot. "We need to talk." "I think we've said everything we need to say." "Aaron, please. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can what? Pretend you didn't spend the last 6 months lying to my face? Pretend you didn't humiliate me in front of our entire community?" I looked around the parking lot, where several other parents were pretending not to watch our conversation. "It's too late for counseling, Nicole. Way too late." She grabbed my arm as I started to walk away. "Don't you dare try to take Owen from me." I stopped and turned around slowly. "I don't have to try to take him. You gave him up the minute you decided your trainer was more important than your family." That night, I got a call from my old college buddy, Derek Mason. Derek owned a bar downtown and had always been the kind of friend who knew everyone's business and wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty when necessary. "Heard you're having some marital difficulties," he said without preamble. "News travels fast. Faster when there's video evidence. That was you keying the truck, right?" I sighed. "Yeah, that was me. Not my finest moment." "Are you kidding? That was beautiful. Subtle, effective, and completely legal. Vandalism, sure, but nothing they can really prosecute." Derek chuckled. "I'm proud of you, man. Always thought you were too nice for your own good." "Well, I'm done being nice." "Good, because I've got some information you might find interesting about your wife's boyfriend." I sat up straighter. "I'm listening." "Brad's got a reputation around town. This isn't his first rodeo with married women. Word is, he's been working his way through the club's female membership for years. Wives, divorcees, anyone with a credit card and daddy issues." "How do you know all this?" "Because 3 of them drink at my bar, regularly, and when women drink, they talk." Derek gave me names, dates, and enough details to paint a picture of Brad as a serial seducer who targeted vulnerable women for sport. It was disgusting, but it was also ammunition. The next day, I decided to pay Brad a visit at his new temporary residence, a studio apartment above a pizza shop on the east side where he'd moved after Jessica threw him out. I found him in the parking lot behind the building, loading his remaining possessions into a friend's pickup truck. He looked like hell, unshaven, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in yesterday, with the hollow-eyed look of a man whose life had just exploded. "Aaron, he said when he saw me approaching. "Look, man, I'm sorry about—" "Save it." I stopped about 6 feet away, close enough to talk, but far enough to avoid any sudden movements. "I'm not here for an apology." "Then what do you want?" "I want you to understand something. This isn't over. Not by a long shot." I pulled out my phone and showed him Derek's research. Photos, names, dates, a comprehensive timeline of his conquests. "I know about Rebecca Patterson. I know about Sandra Chen. I know about at least 6 other women you've been screwing while their husbands were at work." Brad's face went white. "How did you—" "I'm very good at research. It's what I do for a living." I put the phone back in my pocket. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stay away from my family. And if I see you anywhere near Owen's school or our neighborhood, I'm going to make sure every husband in this city knows exactly what kind of man you are. You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm promising you." I smiled that shark smile again. "You see, Brad, you picked the wrong family to screw with. You thought I was just another pushover husband who'd roll over and take it. But I'm not. I'm the kind of guy who documents everything, who plans 3 moves ahead, and who never forgets a slight." I started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Brad, that truck you're loading, the one with the dented door and the new tires, I'd be careful where you park it. Vandalism is such a problem in this neighborhood." That evening, I got a call from Megan Walsh again. "Aaron, you need to stop this. You're ruining lives." "I'm ruining lives? That's rich, coming from the HR manager who let her best friend screw her employee for months without saying a word." "I didn't know." "Bullshit. You knew. You all knew. The only person who didn't know was the husband, because everyone thought I was too stupid or too trusting to figure it out." There was a long pause. "Nicole's devastated. She's barely eating, barely sleeping." "Good. Maybe now she knows how I felt every night she came home smelling like another man's cologne." "You're being cruel." "I'm being honest. There's a difference." After I hung up, I realized something that should have occurred to me earlier. Megan had been awfully quick to defend Nicole, awfully invested in protecting her from the consequences of her actions. And that text I'd received, "You don't know the whole story," had come from a local area code. I pulled up Megan's contact information and compared the numbers. Bingo. Megan Walsh, Nicole's best friend and the club's HR manager, was the one who'd sent me that threatening text. But why? What did she have to gain from protecting Nicole and Brad? I was about to find out. The answer came to me at 2 a.m. while I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Nicole's fake sleep breathing. She'd been pretending to be asleep whenever I came to bed, probably hoping to avoid another confrontation, but my mind was racing, connecting dots that should have been obvious from the beginning. Megan Walsh. 20 years ago, she'd worked for my first software company as a junior developer. I'd fired her for stealing client data and trying to sell it to a competitor. She'd threatened to sue, claimed I was discriminating against her because she was a woman, made a huge scene in front of the entire office. But the evidence was clear, and she'd slunk away with her tail between her legs. I'd forgotten all about Megan Walsh until Nicole started working at the fitness club 5 years ago and came home talking about her amazing new friend, who was so smart and supportive and understood the challenges of working in a male-dominated industry. What were the odds that my wife would randomly befriend the woman I'd fired for corporate espionage 2 decades earlier? In a city of 2 million people, what were the odds of that coincidence? 0. Absolutely 0. I got up quietly and went to my home office, where I kept files on all my former employees. It took me 20 minutes to find Megan's old personnel file, but there it was, Megan Walsh, hired in 2003, fired in 2004 for theft of proprietary information. The photo was 20 years old, but it was definitely the same woman who'd been whispering poison in my wife's ear for the past 5 years. The same woman who was now Nicole's best friend and confidant. The same woman who'd been encouraging Nicole to stand up for herself and not let Aaron control her life and explore her options. The same woman who'd probably introduced Nicole to Brad in the first place. I spent the next 3 hours digging through social media, employment records, and public databases, piecing together Megan's life since I'd fired her. She'd bounced around from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than 2 years, always leaving under mysterious circumstances. She'd been married twice, divorced twice, and had a reputation for stirring up workplace drama wherever she went. But she'd been patient, 20 years, patient. She'd somehow engineered her way into Nicole's life, gained her trust, and then systematically destroyed our marriage from the inside. The affair with Brad wasn't just Nicole being stupid and selfish. It was Megan's revenge, carefully orchestrated and perfectly executed. Until now. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the Starbucks, where Megan usually had her morning coffee. I'd learned her routine from Nicole's casual mentions over the years. 8:30 a.m., grande latte with oat milk, always sat at the same corner table to do paperwork. She was there, typing on her laptop and looking pleased with herself, probably updating her LinkedIn profile or planning her next move in the chess game she thought she was winning. I bought a coffee and sat down across from her without being invited. "Erin," she said, not looking up from her screen. "This is unexpected." "Is it? I don't think anything about this situation has been unexpected for you, Megan. Or should I say, former employee number 247? Her fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. Slowly, she looked up at me, and I saw the exact moment when she realized I'd figured it out. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Megan Walsh, hired by Davidson Software Solutions in March 2003, fired in September 2004 for attempting to sell client data to Competitive Systems, Inc. You made quite a scene when I escorted you out of the building. Lots of threats about lawsuits and revenge." She closed her laptop carefully, her face a mask of calm that didn't quite hide the panic in her eyes. "That was a long time ago." "Not long enough, apparently. 20 years you've been planning this. 20 years of waiting for the perfect opportunity to destroy my life, and you found it when Nicole started working at the club. You're paranoid." "Am I? Let's see." I pulled out my phone and started reading from my notes. "Nicole starts working at Fitness First in January 2019. You're hired as HR manager in March 2019, just 2 months later. What a coincidence. You immediately befriend Nicole, become her confidant, start filling her head with ideas about how she deserves better, how she's too good for her boring husband." Megan's coffee cup rattled slightly as she set it down. Nicole came to those conclusions on her own. Did she? Or did you spend 5 years manipulating her, undermining our marriage and setting up the perfect scenario for her to cheat? I leaned forward. "Tell me, Megan, was Brad your idea too? Did you introduce them? Did you suggest those late-night training sessions and inventory meetings?" She stood up abruptly, grabbing her laptop and purse. "You're insane. Sit down." My voice was quiet, but carried enough menace to make her freeze. "We're not done talking." She sat back down, but her whole body was tense, ready to run. "Here's what I know," I continued. "You've been systematically destroying my marriage for years. You encouraged Nicole to be secretive, to hide things from me, to see me as the enemy instead of her partner. You probably helped her set up the affair, maybe even suggested the Blue River Inn as a meeting place. You can't prove any of that." "Can't I?" I smiled. "You know what's funny about being in the tech industry for 25 years? You learn how to find information. Digital forensics, data recovery, social media analysis. It's amazing what people leave behind when they think they're being clever." I pulled out a folder and spread several printed pages across the table. Text messages between Megan and Nicole, dating back 3 years, screenshots of social media conversations, email exchanges, phone records. "Erin doesn't appreciate you," I read from one of the texts. "You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." That was from you to Nicole, dated 6 months before the affair started. Megan's face had gone pale. "Brad asked about you again today," I read from another message. "I think he really likes you. Maybe you should stay after work sometime and get to know him better." That was you, Megan. You set this whole thing up. Nicole made her own choices. Did she? Or did you spend years grooming her to make exactly the choices you wanted her to make? I gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. It doesn't matter now. What matters is what happens next. What do you want? I want you to understand that your little revenge fantasy is over. I know who you are. I know what you've done. And I have enough evidence to destroy your career and your reputation just as thoroughly as you tried to destroy my marriage. I stood up and looked down at her. Stay away from my family, Megan. Stay away from Nicole, stay away from Owen, and stay away from me. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone in this city knows exactly what kind of person you are. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. This isn't over, Erin. I turned back and smiled. You're absolutely right. It's not over, but it's not going the way you planned either. That afternoon, I got a call from Patricia Wong, my lawyer. Erin, we need to talk. Nicole's attorney contacted me today. She's threatening to file abuse charges against you. Abuse charges? I've never laid a hand on her. Not physical abuse. Emotional abuse, harassment, stalking. She's claiming you've been threatening her and her friends, that you're trying to isolate her and destroy her support system. I laughed. Her support system? You mean her accomplices? This is serious, Erin. If she can make these charges stick, it could affect the custody arrangement. Let her try. I have documentation of everything I've done, and none of it constitutes abuse or harassment. What I've done is expose the truth about her affair and the people who helped her cover it up. Just be careful. Don't give her any ammunition to use against you. After I hung up, I realized Megan was escalating the situation. She'd convinced Nicole to go on the offensive, to paint me as the villain in this story. It was a smart move, actually. If they could make me look like an abusive husband, it would shift public sympathy away from Nicole's infidelity and toward her supposed victimization. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me again. I spent the rest of the afternoon preparing for war. 3 days later, I put my plan into motion at the annual Cuyahoga County Community Awards dinner, a pompous affair where local businesses and organizations patted themselves on the back for their contributions to society. Nicole had been nominated for Citizen of the Year by the Fitness First corporate office, probably as damage control for the scandal that was destroying their brand. The event was held at the Cleveland Convention Center with about 300 people in attendance. Business leaders, politicians, media representatives, and assorted hangers-on who enjoyed free dinner and open bars. I'd bought a ticket weeks earlier, back when I thought I'd be attending as Nicole's proud husband. Now I had different plans. I arrived early and positioned myself at a table near the back, where I could see everything but remain relatively inconspicuous. Nicole was at the head table with the other nominees, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked beautiful and composed, playing the role of the wronged wife who was bravely carrying on despite her husband's erratic behavior. Megan was there too, sitting with a group of Fitness First employees, probably coaching them on what to say if anyone asked about the situation. Brad was notably absent, probably banned from attending by the corporate office. The dinner portion of the evening dragged on with the usual rubber chicken and boring speeches from local dignitaries. I sat through it all, sipping wine and watching Nicole work the room during the social breaks. She was good at this. Charming, gracious, playing the victim just enough to garner sympathy without seeming weak. Finally, they got to the awards portion of the evening. Nicole was the third nominee called for Citizen of the Year. The presenter, some corporate vice president from Fitness First, gave a glowing speech about her dedication to community health and wellness and her inspiring leadership in the face of personal challenges. The audience applauded politely as Nicole walked to the podium to give her acceptance speech. She looked radiant under the stage lights, every inch the successful businesswoman and pillar of the community. "Thank you so much for this honor," she began, her voice clear and confident. "When I started working in the fitness industry, I never imagined I'd have the opportunity to impact so many lives." I let her talk for about 2 minutes, long enough for everyone to settle in and pay attention. Then I stood up and started walking toward the stage. "Excuse me," I called out, loud enough to be heard but not quite shouting. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think there's been some confusion." The room went silent. Nicole froze at the podium, her face cycling through shock, panic, and rage in the space of about 3 seconds. "Sir," the presenter said, stepping forward, "this is a private event. If you could please—" "Oh, I'm supposed to be here," I said, pulling out my ticket and waving it. "Aaron Davidson, Nicole's husband. I just wanted to clear up a few things about my wife's inspiring leadership." Security was starting to move toward me, but I'd timed this perfectly. I was already close enough to the stage that I could get my message out before they reached me. "You see," I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the room, "Nicole has been very inspiring indeed. She's inspired her subordinate, Brad Kowalski, to new heights of physical fitness. They've been conducting private training sessions at the Blue River Inn for the past 6 months. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Phones came out as people started recording. "Aaron, stop!" Nicole hissed from the podium. "I have the receipts," I said, pulling out my phone and holding it up. "Text messages, location data, photos, the works. Would you like me to share them with everyone?" The security guards reached me, but I wasn't resisting. I let them take my arms while I continued talking. "And let's not forget Megan Walsh, Nicole's best friend and HR manager, who helped orchestrate this whole thing as revenge for being fired from my company 20 years ago for corporate theft." I spotted Megan in the crowd, looking like she wanted to disappear into the floor. "This woman," I pointed at Nicole, who was now crying at the podium, "has been systematically lying to everyone in this room. She's been cheating on her husband, violating company policy, and allowing her personal vendettas to destroy families. And you want to give her an award for citizenship?" The security guards were escorting me toward the exit now, but the damage was done. The room was in chaos. People talking, phones recording, media representatives frantically taking notes. As they led me past Megan's table, I stopped and looked directly at her. 20 years, I said. Was it worth it?" She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. They escorted me out of the building, but they didn't arrest me. Technically, I hadn't broken any laws, I'd had a valid ticket, I hadn't threatened anyone, and everything I'd said was true. Disruptive? Absolutely. Illegal? Not quite. I sat in my car in the parking lot for about 20 minutes, watching people stream out of the convention center. Some looked shocked, others seemed entertained by the drama. A few reporters tried to approach my car, but I just smiled and drove away. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Nicole, Megan, Patricia Wong, Mike Henderson, even Derek from the bar. I ignored them all and drove home to an empty house. Owen was spending the night at my sister's place, a precaution I'd arranged in case things got messy. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my living room, waiting for the fallout to begin. It didn't take long. By midnight, the story was all over social media. Neckarm Citizen of the Year was trending locally, and the video clips of my speech were being shared hundreds of times. The local news websites had picked up the story, and I was getting interview requests from reporters. Nicole came home around 1 a.m., slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. "You bastard!" she screamed, storming into the living room. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. My career is ruined." "Your career was ruined the minute you decided to screw your employee," I said calmly, not getting up from my chair. "I just made sure everyone else knew about it." "You're sick. You're obsessed. No wonder you what? No wonder you cheated. No wonder you lied. No wonder you let your psychotic friend manipulate you into destroying our marriage." I finally stood up, and she took a step back. "Don't you dare try to blame me for your choices, Nicole." She was crying now, the ugly kind of crying that comes from realizing you've lost everything and it's your own fault. "What do you want from me?" she sobbed. "What do I have to do to make this stop?" "Nothing," I said. "There's nothing you can do. It's over. We're over. Your affair is over. Your friendship with Megan is over. Your career at Fitness First is over. Everything you built on lies and manipulation is over." I walked past her toward the stairs. "I'll be filing for divorce tomorrow. My lawyer will contact your lawyer. You can stay in the guest room until you find somewhere else to live." "Erin, please." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked back at her. "You know what the funny thing is, Nicole? If you'd just come to me and said you were unhappy, if you'd asked for counseling or separation or even divorce, I probably would have worked with you. We could have handled this like adults, protected Owen, maybe even stayed friends." I shook my head. "But you chose to lie. You chose to cheat. You chose to humiliate me and let your friend use our marriage as her personal revenge fantasy. So now you get to live with the consequences." As I walked upstairs, I could hear her sobbing in the living room. Part of me felt bad for her. The part that had loved her for 12 years, that had planned to grow old with her, that had believed in the life we were building together. But that part was getting smaller every day. The next morning brought fresh chaos. Fitness. First had fired both Nicole and Megan for conduct unbecoming and violation of company policies. Brad had been terminated the day after our confrontation, but now the corporate office was doing damage control, releasing statements about their zero tolerance for workplace misconduct. Local news stations were calling it the Citizen of the Year scandal, and reporters were camping out in front of our house. I had to take Owen to school through the back entrance to avoid the cameras. My phone was ringing constantly. Reporters, lawyers, old friends who'd seen the news, and random people who just wanted to share their opinions about infidelity and public humiliation. But the call that mattered most came from Patricia Wong. "Erin, Nicole's attorney wants to settle quickly and quietly. She's willing to give you primary custody of Owen and accept a minimal financial settlement in exchange for you agreeing not to pursue any further legal action." "What kind of legal action?" "Alienation of affection, intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy. There are several angles we could pursue, especially now that you've documented Megan's involvement." I thought about it for a moment. I could drag this out for years, make Nicole and Megan pay financially as well as socially. I could probably win significant damages and completely destroy what was left of their lives. But Owen had already been through enough. And honestly, seeing Nicole's career implode and watching Megan's 20-year revenge fantasy blow up in her face was satisfaction enough. "Tell them I'll take the deal," I said. "But I want it in writing that Nicole agrees to have no contact with Megan Walsh, and if she violates that condition, I get full custody with no visitation." Done. That afternoon, I picked Owen up from school and took him to his favorite restaurant, a pizza place with arcade games and terrible music that somehow made the best pepperoni pizza in Cleveland. "Dad," he said while we waited for our food, "are you and Mom getting divorced?" I'd been dreading this conversation, but Owen deserved honesty. Yes, buddy, we are. Because of what she did? Because of what we both did. Sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are too big to fix. He nodded solemnly, processing this information with the serious expression he got when he was trying to understand something complicated. Will I still see Mom? Of course. You'll spend time with both of us. That won't change. Good. He brightened a little. Can we get extra cheese on the pizza? Absolutely. As I watched my son attack a slice of pizza with the enthusiasm only a 10-year-old can muster, I realized something important. Nicole's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, and Megan's manipulation had cost us our marriage. But it hadn't destroyed what mattered most. Owen was still my son. I still had my business, my friends, my integrity. I'd lost a wife, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I could survive betrayal, fight back when necessary, and come out stronger on the other side. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. Nicole moved in with her sister in Columbus, as far away from Cleveland as she could get while still staying in Ohio. Megan had disappeared entirely. Word was she'd moved to Phoenix and was working at a call center under her maiden name. Brad was still in town, living in that studio apartment and working at a gym on the south side. His reputation was shot, but he was young enough to start over somewhere else if he was smart. The Fitness First on Cedar Road had closed permanently, a victim of the scandal and the corporate office's decision to cut their losses. The building was already being converted into a medical office complex. I kept Owen's routine as normal as possible: school, soccer practice, weekend trips to see his mom. He seemed to be adjusting well, all things considered. Kids are resilient that way. As for me, I was doing better than I'd expected. The business was thriving, partly because the publicity had brought in new clients who appreciated my no-nonsense approach to problem-solving. I'd started dating again, nothing serious yet, but it was nice to remember what it felt like to be with someone who actually wanted to be there. Sometimes I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I'd taken my revenge too far. But then I'd remember the months of lies, the humiliation, the systematic destruction of everything I'd thought was real, and I'd realize I'd done exactly what needed to be done. Nicole had made her choices, Megan had made hers, and I'd made mine. In the end, we all got exactly what we deserved.